was just reporting at Merrill Hay Mall today, and we were running. Police were approaching, the crowds, trying to get them to disperse. We were running. My boyfriend, who was with me, was hit by a tear gas canister. And as I was, seeing if his leg was okay, police came closer. And we went around the corner, and I was saying, I'm pressed. Police deliberately took me, sprayed pepper spray on my face, and then put me in zip ties. What are they called? Zip ties. I'm in the back of a cop car right now. I believe we haven't moved anywhere. I think we're still in Merrill Hay parking lot. But yeah, this, I'm just doing my job as a journalist. I'm just out here reporting as I see. I asked why I was arrested, and they said, I think something about failing to disperse or something about that. And I said, well, I'm a journalist. And police informed me that I would have to report from further away. I said multiple times, I'm a reporter with the Des Moines Register. I'm a reporter with the Des Moines Register. Yeah, I'm okay though. The pepper spray really stung my eyes and my face, but I'm feeling better now.
journalist who's going on trial for charges stemming from her coverage of the summer protests. Des Moines Register reporter Andrea Sahouri is charged with failure to disperse and interference with official acts. Sahouri was pepper sprayed and says that during her arrest, she told officers she was a journalist. While Polk County Attorney John Sarcone's office claims that Sahouri wasn't wearing press credentials and appeared to be an active participant. The trial could last 2 days and will be the first trial for a working journalist nationwide since 2018.
Police now advancing on protesters. Oh my gosh, we're moving.
We've also seen tear gas being used. Here we go, they're moving through again. This is exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like. We're just staying safely.
Oh.
Whoa!
Go home. He the problem. Under arrest. Hand behind your back.
I'm sorry?
You're under arrest.
Okay. Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest?
not expect to see in the United States.
I was saying, I'm press, I'm press, I'm press. Police deliberately took me. I'm just doing my job as a journalist.
Des Moines Register reporter Andrea Sahouri was arrested in May while covering a Black Lives Matter protest. She was pepper sprayed and detained and charged with failure to disperse and interference with official acts. She was one of many journalists arrested last May and June. Most of the charges, most of those cases were dropped, but not in this case. The fact that these misdemeanor charges are still pending and that there's a trial set to begin on Monday is stunning to many press freedom advocates. It's creating a lot of concern across the country. So joining me now to talk about this case and what's going to happen is Maribel Perez-Wadsworth. She's the publisher of USA Today and the president of news at Gannett Media, which owns the Des Moines Register and other newspapers. So Maribel, you're trying to draw attention to this case. What has happened so far? Why is this actually moving to trial?
It's really inexplicable, Brian. I appreciate you having me on this morning. The fact that in the heat of the moment, one can argue that perhaps, the police didn't understand, either, as you heard her, she's very clear that she's identifying herself. She's following the instructions of the police at the time. The fact that in that moment, perhaps they didn't understand fully she was a working journalist can be understandable. 9 months later, it is simply inexcusable that she's still facing these charges and going to trial tomorrow.
Is there any chance this will be resolved before tomorrow? It sounds like there's not.
Goodness, it sure hasn't seemed that way. It's for reasons that just escape us. The county attorney in Des Moines, the police have seemingly dug in their heels and have.
Well, that's
really
because they say she looked like she was participating, that she wasn't wearing a press credential, and it seemed like she was participating in the protests. Is there anything to that?
No, that's simply not true. She was absolutely working. She had been at another protest nearby before attending this one and covering it. She had another colleague of hers, another reporter at the Des Moines Register, who was also nearby, who vouched for her, who explained she was on assignment. There is absolutely no question that she was a working journalist at the time.
Here's the big picture story from the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker showing that arrests of journalists in the midst of their jobs covering protests have risen markedly in the past few years. Now, that is partly because of the uprising last May and June. You see 127 arrests and detainments in the U.S. in 2020. Are protests the most dangerous place in America for journalists now?
I think they absolutely are. And I think one of the other key stats from the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker is that among those arrested, more than a third are actually assaulted in the process of that arrest. So this is absolutely a significant issue and one we're going to have to address. The press freedom is one of the most signature freedoms enshrined in our First Amendment. This is exactly the oxygen that our democracy lives on, and it's where we hold government to account. And so an attack on a journalist like this, trying to do her job, trying to report the truth, trying to help people sort fact from misinformation, that's not an attack on a media company. That's an attack on the First Amendment. That's an attack on democracy.
Maribel, thank you. We will stay in touch on this.
Thank you so much.
Zooming out now beyond the U.S., the global picture for press freedom is pretty bleak right now. Here are 3 cases that we are monitoring around the world. Beginning in Myanmar, an Associated Press photographer and several other members of the media are behind bars in Myanmar for trying to cover anti-coup protests in that country. The violence there keeps getting bloodier. The AP says that Thien Zol was simply doing his job and must be immediately released. Turning to the Middle East, a journalist in Yemen who has worked with CNN and other major outlets has been behind bars for 6 months. Human Rights Watch says Adel al-Hassani has been treated deplorably. And in Egypt, columnist Gamal al-Gamal was recently detained and accused of spreading false news. CPJ says he must be released immediately and allowed to work freely in the country. These are the world's eyes and ears, and when they are blindfolded, we are all blinded. Persecution of journalists is part of what some activists call a global erosion of democracy.